What's causing thousands of people to pack up and leave some of America's biggest cities? From skyrocketing home prices to unemployment spikes, these places are facing serious challenges. In some cities, property values have plunged by over 12%, while others are dealing with crime rates up 30%. With rents hitting $3,900 a month and average home prices soaring past $1 million, it's no surprise people are searching for greener pastures. Job losses, business closures, and decaying infrastructure are making it even harder to stay. Curious, which cities are collapsing the fastest? Is your city on the brink? Number 10. Austin, Texas. Remember when Austin was the place to be? Everyone from Silicon Valley techies to remote workers rushed to the city, lured by its trendy vibes, live music, and no state income tax. But here in 2025, that fairy tale has fizzled out. And fast. Home prices? They've tanked. The median home value now stands at $498,500, down a whopping 7.7% from just last year. Some neighborhoods like East Austin have seen price drops of up to 12%, and that's sending shockwaves through the market. But why? Well, let's start with the layoffs. After the tech hiring frenzy of 2021 and 2022, companies like Tesla and Meta pulled the brakes. In the past year alone, over 18,000 tech jobs disappeared in Austin. And remote work? It's no longer the golden ticket it once was. Many workers are being called back to corporate offices, often in different states. Then there's the tax burden. While Texas might boast about its zero income tax, the property tax bite is brutal. With an average tax rate of 2.22%, homeowners are coughing up around $11,000 annually on a median-priced home. For comparison, that's 65% higher than the national average. Traffic has also spiraled out of control. Despite massive infrastructure investments, Austin drivers lose an average of 58 hours a year stuck in congestion. I-35 remains a daily nightmare, with travel times up 22% compared to 2023. And with public transit failing to keep up, commuting has become unbearable for many. The city's once thriving nightlife and small business scene are also feeling the heat. Downtown commercial vacancies have soared to 24%, and small business owners report revenue dips of 30%. Tourists still visit for SXSW and ACL, but locals are increasingly frustrated. So, is Austin on the verge of a total collapse? Not necessarily. Some see this as a market correction, but for thousands of laid-off workers and homeowners facing foreclosure, the Texas dream has quickly turned into a nightmare. Number 9. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, the shimmering skyline, deep dish pizza, and endless lakeside charm. But behind the iconic landmarks, the Windy City is struggling to keep its footing. Since 2020, the city has faced a population decline of 7.4%, with more than 200,000 people packing up and leaving. The reason? A cocktail of high taxes, skyrocketing crime, and stagnant income growth. While the national per capita income rose by 19.4% over the last few years, Chicagoans only saw a 12.3% increase. For many residents, wages simply aren't keeping pace with the city's 11.2% inflation rate. And if you own a home? Oof. Property taxes in Cook County now average 2.27%, meaning a homeowner with a $300,000 house shells out around $6,800 annually. That's nearly double the national average. Crime rates are another grim chapter in this story. In just 1 year, violent crime surged by 24%, with carjackings and burglaries leading the pack. Some neighborhoods have seen crime rates climb by 40%, leaving residents anxious and businesses struggling. And speaking of businesses, they're leaving too. Major companies like Boeing and Citadel pulled their headquarters out of Chicago, citing high costs and safety concerns. The result? A 27.1% commercial vacancy rate in the Loop, the highest in a decade. Transportation isn't faring any better. While the CTA remains a lifeline for many, ridership is still 30% below pre-pandemic levels. Delayed trains and deteriorating infrastructure only add to commuter woes. Yet despite the hardships, Chicagoans remain resilient. From vibrant summer festivals to neighborhood block parties, the city's spirit is hard to break. But without serious reforms, more residents could bid farewell to the windy city, leaving behind an urban landscape struggling to stay afloat. Number 8. New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans has always been a city that knows how to celebrate. The sound of jazz still fills the air, and Mardi Gras parades continue to dazzle. But beneath the vibrant festivals and powdered sugar-coated beignets, the Big Easy is facing some tough times. In just the past 3 years, the city's population has dipped by 5%, with thousands of residents seeking greener pastures. And here's a shocker. Nearly 22.9% of the city's homes now sit empty. Entire blocks of historic neighborhoods are lined with boarded-up properties. Why? Skyrocketing insurance premiums are a major culprit. Louisiana's homeowners' insurance rates have surged 30% in the last year alone, with the average policy now costing $3,800 annually. For many residents, that's simply unaffordable. Flooding is another constant battle. With the city sitting below sea level, recent storms have caused billions in damages. Hurricane Ida alone inflicted $75 billion in losses, leaving thousands displaced. Federal disaster relief has been slow, and repairs are still ongoing. The tourism sector, once a backbone of New Orleans' economy, has yet to recover. Visitor numbers remain 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. French Quarter businesses report 40% less foot traffic, and hotels struggle to fill rooms. Even the city's famous festivals are seeing smaller crowds. And when it comes to jobs, the outlook isn't much better. Unemployment rates hover at 7.8%, far above the national average of 4.2%. High-paying industries are scarce, forcing many locals to work multiple low-wage jobs just to scrape by. But despite all this, New Orleans refuses to lose its soul. Local artists continue to paint the streets with colorful murals, and second-line parades march on. Community organizations are working tirelessly to restore neighborhoods and bring people back home. The question is, can the Big Easy weather the storm, or will the weight of these challenges push the city further into decline? Only time will tell. Number 7. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, often called the Gateway to the West, has seen better days. Known for its iconic Gateway Arch and vibrant baseball culture, the city is now facing a steep decline. Since 2020, St. Louis has experienced a 6.38% population drop, losing tens of thousands of residents. This once thriving industrial hub has struggled to adapt to the modern economy, leaving behind empty homes, struggling businesses, and rising crime rates. The median household income in St. Louis is currently around $47,000, a stark contrast to the national median of $74,580. Pair that with an unemployment rate of 6.7%, and you'll understand why so many residents are packing up. The city's economic struggles are largely tied to the decline of manufacturing jobs, which once made up the backbone of the local economy. In fact, the manufacturing sector has shrunk by 30% in the last decade alone. But it's not just jobs. Crime remains a major concern, with St. Louis consistently ranking among the most dangerous cities in America. In 2024, the violent crime rate surged 18%, and property crime rose by 12%. With fewer police officers on the streets, the department is currently down by 15% in staff, residents are left feeling vulnerable. Some neighborhoods, like North Street Louis, face crime rates up to 5 times higher than the national average. The housing market isn't faring much better. Home values in St. Louis have lagged behind national growth, with prices rising only 23% in the past 5 years compared to the 45% national average. And vacancy rates? They're soaring. Nearly 19% of the city's residential properties sit empty, a clear sign of urban decline. Despite the gloomy outlook, hope remains. Local initiatives like the North Side Regeneration Project aim to revitalize neighborhoods, while new small businesses are popping up in the downtown district. But can St. Louis reverse its downward spiral before the arch becomes a monument to a city that once was? Only time will tell. Number 6. Greenville, Mississippi. Greenville, nestled along the Mississippi River, was once a bustling hub of agriculture and trade. But in 2025, this city in the heart of the Delta is facing an alarming population decline. Over the past 3 years, Greenville has lost 6.43% of its residents. With fewer than 28,000 people remaining, the city's economy is struggling to keep its head above water. The median household income in Greenville sits at just $30,000, nearly 60% below the national median. And with an unemployment rate lingering around 8.4%, job opportunities are scarce. Many residents rely on agriculture, particularly cotton farming, but unpredictable weather patterns and economic shifts have made this sector increasingly unstable. The closure of major employers like USG Interiors has only worsened the situation, eliminating hundreds of jobs in recent years. Greenville's public infrastructure is also in dire straits. The city's water system, originally built in the 1950s, has faced frequent failures. Residents have endured multiple boil water notices over the past year due to contamination concerns. Repairing the aging infrastructure would cost upwards of $30 million, a price tag that the city's budget simply can't support. Education is another sore spot. Greenville's public schools are severely underfunded, with spending per student hovering around $8,900 compared to the national average of $13,185. Low graduation rates and a lack of career opportunities have caused many young people to leave in search of better prospects. In fact, 45% of Greenville's recent graduates relocate within 5 years. And then there's the housing crisis. With over 20% of homes in the city abandoned, property values have plummeted. The average home in Greenville is now worth just $77,000, compared to the national median of $346,000. Many neighborhoods are dotted with vacant lots and crumbling houses, haunting reminders of a once thriving community. But Greenville isn't giving up. Local leaders are pushing for federal aid, while organizations like Delta Force Community Development are working to restore homes and revitalize neighborhoods. The question remains, can Greenville chart a path to recovery, or will the Mississippi Delta lose yet another piece of its heritage? Number 5. Lake Charles, Louisiana. Lake Charles, Louisiana has been through the ringer, hit by back-to-back hurricanes, Laura and Delta. In 2020, the city has yet to fully recover. Fast forward to 2025, and Lake Charles has lost 6.52% of its population. Many residents simply couldn't bear the repeated destruction and skyrocketing insurance costs, leading to a mass exodus. The city's housing market is in shambles. Home insurance premiums have surged by 40% since the storms, with the average homeowner now paying $4,500 annually. Many insurers have pulled out of the region entirely, leaving residents with limited and costly options. Meanwhile, 1 in 4 homes remains damaged or abandoned, contributing to a steep decline in property values. The median home price now hovers around $148,000, nearly 50% below the national median. Job opportunities are also scarce. While the petrochemical industry remains a major employer, the sector has faced major layoffs, cutting jobs by 15% since 2022. And with unemployment now at 8.1%, many families have opted to relocate to nearby cities like Baton Rouge or Houston. Public infrastructure isn't holding up well either. Despite receiving over $3 billion in federal aid for rebuilding, the city's drainage systems remain fragile. Every heavy rain brings the risk of flash flooding. Schools are also struggling, with 30% of local campuses operating under temporary repairs. Student performance has declined, with standardized test scores dropping 12% in just 2 years. Yet, amidst the challenges, the spirit of Lake Charles remains unbroken. The community continues to host vibrant events like Contraband Days and the Cajun Food Festival, drawing visitors eager to celebrate Louisiana culture. Nonprofits and volunteer organizations are making strides in restoring homes and providing support to displaced families. But will it be enough? As climate change looms and insurance premiums soar, Lake Charles remains at a crossroads. The resilience of its people is undeniable, but without lasting solutions, the city may face even steeper losses in the years to come. Number 4. Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson, Mississippi may be the state's capital, but it's facing some capital-sized challenges. Since 2020, the city has lost 6.20% of its population, and the downward spiral isn't slowing down. With fewer than 145,000 residents remaining, it's a ghost of its former self. Many blame the deteriorating infrastructure, rampant crime, and lack of economic opportunities for driving people away. Let's talk about the water crisis, because you can't talk about Jackson without mentioning it. The city's water system is notoriously unreliable, leading to multiple boil water notices and complete outages. In 2022 alone, residents endured 48 days without safe drinking water. Federal aid has poured in, but repairs are slow, and estimates suggest it could cost over $1 billion to fully modernize the water infrastructure. For a city with a median household income of just $39,000, nearly 50% below the national median, that's a hefty price tag. Crime has further exacerbated Jackson's struggles. The city consistently ranks among the most dangerous in the U.S., with a violent crime rate of 97.5 per 1,000 residents, 4 times the national average. Carjackings and homicides have surged, leading businesses to shutter and residents to relocate. Local law enforcement is stretched thin, operating with a 20% staffing shortage. On the economic front, opportunities are scarce. Jackson's unemployment rate sits at 7.9%, well above the national average of 4.2%. Major corporations have bypassed the city, favoring more stable regions. Even once thriving areas like downtown Jackson now have a 25% commercial vacancy rate. And if you think housing is a silver lining, think again. While the median home price is just $120,000, it's often because homes are in desperate need of repair, a direct result of years of neglect. But despite these struggles, the spirit of Jackson remains. Community leaders and organizations like Reimagine Jackson are working tirelessly to revitalize neighborhoods, restore basic services, and attract investment. Still, without major intervention, the city's decline could accelerate. Will Jackson rise again, or will it continue to lose its residents to greener pastures? Only time will tell. Number 3. Boston, Massachusetts. Boston, a city of history, higher education, and Red Sox pride. But even this cultural powerhouse isn't immune to the pressures of economic strain. Since 2019, Boston's population has dropped by 6%, with thousands of residents choosing to leave behind the city's cobblestone streets and colonial charm. The culprit? Sky-high costs and a housing market that's completely out of control. The median home price in Boston has ballooned to a staggering $800,000, more than twice the national median. Renting isn't any easier. A one-bedroom apartment in the city now averages $3,200 per month, a 14% increase from just 2 years ago. And even with a booming tech and finance sector, wages haven't kept pace. The city's median household income of $89,000 sounds decent, but it doesn't stretch far when utilities, taxes, and groceries in Boston are a whopping 35% higher than the national average. And speaking of taxes, Massachusetts isn't called Taxachusetts for nothing. Residents face a state income tax of 5%, and property taxes in Boston have surged to an average of $7,400 annually. Combined with the city's hefty excise taxes and sales tax, many Bostonians are financially squeezed to their limit. The corporate world hasn't been much help either. While companies like Moderna and Wayfair remain headquartered in Boston, many others have shifted operations to more tax-friendly states like Texas or Florida. In fact, 19% of office spaces in downtown Boston now sit vacant, the highest rate in over a decade. Public transit has also taken a hit. The MBTA, once considered one of the nation's most reliable transit systems, now suffers from frequent delays and budget shortfalls. Ridership remains 30% below pre-pandemic levels, contributing to worsening traffic congestion. Despite the hardships, Boston's spirit remains unbroken. Community-led efforts are pushing for affordable housing solutions and transit improvements. But the question looms: will the city's rich history and cultural appeal be enough to reverse its population slide? Number 2. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, once the beating heart of the American auto industry, has seen its fair share of ups and downs. But in 2025, the city's economic engine seems to be sputtering once again. Since 2019, Detroit's population has shrunk by 7.4%, marking yet another chapter in its decades-long struggle. With around 620,000 residents left, the city has lost more than 60% of its population since its 1950s peak. Why are people leaving? For starters, Detroit's job market remains a challenge. While the big three automakers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, still employ thousands, automation and restructuring have led to significant layoffs. The city's unemployment rate is stubbornly high at 9.1%, compared to the national average of 4.2%. Even sectors like healthcare and construction, which saw growth in other cities, lag behind in Detroit. The median household income tells another story. At just $36,000 a year, it's nearly 52% lower than the U.S. median. Meanwhile, property values remain shockingly low. The median home price in Detroit stands at $75,000, making it one of the most affordable major cities. But affordability doesn't mean desirability. Many homes are in disrepair, and the city has an estimated 22,000 abandoned properties. Then there's the crime. Despite attempts at revitalization, Detroit's violent crime rate remains 5 times the national average. Residents often feel unsafe, and even the promise of low housing costs isn't enough to offset these concerns. Additionally, the city's public services remain underfunded, with pothole-riddled roads and unreliable public transit further frustrating locals. But it's not all bleak. Initiatives like Motor City Restore and the Detroit Future City Plan aim to revitalize neighborhoods and repurpose vacant lots. The thriving art scene in places like the Detroit Institute of Arts and local events like the Movement Electronic Music Festival still draw tourists. Some hope remains for a brighter future, but Detroit's rebound is still a long road ahead. Will the Motor City find a way to rev its engines once more, or will its population continue to stall? That's the million-dollar question. Number 1. San Francisco, California. San Francisco, once the shimmering crown jewel of California's tech boom, is now facing one of the most dramatic declines in the country. Since 2019, the city has lost 8.29% of its population, a staggering drop for a city that was once one of the most desirable places to live. With fewer than 780,000 residents left, the question is no longer why people are leaving, but why wouldn't they? Let's start with the housing crisis. The median home price in San Francisco is still a jaw-dropping $1.2 million, even after a 12% decline from its peak in 2022. Renters aren't faring much better. A one-bedroom apartment now averages $3,900 per month, nearly 3 times the national average. Despite the price drops, thousands of apartments sit empty, with the city's vacancy rate climbing to 15%. Why? Many landlords would rather leave units unoccupied than drop rents further. But the housing issue is just the beginning. Crime has surged, with property crime rates up 23% in the last year alone. Car break-ins, thefts, and vandalism have become so common that some residents joke about leaving their car doors unlocked just to avoid a smashed window. Even in the once bustling downtown, boarded-up storefronts and empty office buildings are a common sight. Commercial vacancy rates have reached a record-high 33%, and many tech giants, including Twitter, Airbnb, and Salesforce, have slashed office space, embracing remote work instead. And speaking of work, the job market isn't what it used to be. While San Francisco was once the epicenter of innovation, the city has lost over 25,000 tech jobs in the last 2 years alone. Layoffs at companies like Meta and Google have rippled through the local economy, leaving restaurants, retail shops, and service workers without steady income. Then there's the exodus to more affordable cities. Many former San Franciscans have fled to places like Austin, Phoenix, or even Boise, where the cost of living is a fraction of what it is in the Bay Area. The result? Moving truck rentals out of San Francisco are 65% higher than the national average. But is there hope? Some say yes. The city is doubling down on revitalization efforts, investing $400 million in infrastructure projects and small business grants. New entertainment districts and park renovations are in the works. Still, with so many economic challenges, San Francisco has a steep hill to climb. The Golden City may rise again, but for now, it's losing its shine, one resident at a time.